Hi, my name is Dr. Scott Young, and today we're going to talk about the fiat dollar inside of NESARA, that will come away from NESARA into NESARA, and the gold-backed currency coming right up. Okay, so what most people struggle with, and I had this guy named Michael. He's a really nice guy. You'd like him if you interacted with him. He's an insurance agent. Now, insurance people, especially when they have a broad base, they know a lot about money. And so what I was trying to deal with him is that he's struggling with this concept because he's built up a bunch of information about money. He knows more about it than most people. But what he's understood is this thing called the fiat currency. A fiat currency, all it just means is that we have confidence in something that has no backing. You could have confidence in, sorry, I walked off screen there. You can have confidence in this empty pen. This is one of my old pens. I just kind of threw it over on the floor. You can have confidence that that's worth something, right? No, if I was walking into 1890 and I walked in with this little pen that you could draw on a board and then erase it, well, that's really cool. Okay, there's not very many things that had that because of a very permanent kind of response, right? So you could have this little thing that you could draw on and then erase it, right? You're like, ooh, that's got some value. And what if I had enough of these and people decided that they're going to trade this for the value point? But to me, that thing is it sort of doesn't look like a dead pen, but it is to me. It doesn't have a lot of value. That's exactly what a fiat currency is. When you're talking about money, you're talking about that's what it really is. It has no backing. And that started when the Federal Reserve came in 1913, but it actually got really bad in one of the times of bankruptcy, actually in 1933, when FDR took us off the gold standard. So what we're talking about with NESARA, so that's the background. And this messes people up because all that they've learned and all they've studied about is null and void, in essence. And that messes people's minds up because in the NESARA era, so NESARA is National Economic Stabilization and Reformation Act. GESARA is for global. So this is not a mark of the beast. This is not a one world currency. Each country has their own currencies. So they all have their different currencies for their countries, okay? It's very kind of cool. Each one of them is going to have a precious metal or type of thing. You could have diamonds or something like that. Something that has innate value. What the heck does that mean? It means that if it's gold, people want that, okay? It doesn't matter what era. You would like it in 1890 and in 1990, today in 2022. So it all has value. That's obviously different values with that too. Diamonds or whatever that might be, okay? Something that is not fleeting. Now see, that's so opposite of what the Cabal wants from you. They want you to get you into confidence in them, and then they can adjust it in whatever way. That's really closer to lie than truth. See, this is actually biblical. In 1 Corinthians 3:13, or about 11 to about 18, it talks about we could build on our foundation things that are wood, hay, or stubble, or gold, silver, and precious stones. And it says, be careful with that. Why is it talking about that? Because those were actually seen as value points. What? It was value points that made a valuable money in essence. But fiat currency is just like the dumb pen. You're going, as soon as it loses its value because you've chosen to change that value is what happens. So when people go, they have to move from this thing called a fiat that has no value. How in the world, if I have $1,000 in the bank, okay, how in the world is it going to change over? Now, most people believe, and they're wrong, but most people believe that you revalue it based upon the fiat over here. You go, well, what would they do? Well, so if we're talking about gold, and don't rattle off the number it is today, I mean, what it is for you today, but right now it's about 1850, okay? So at this very second, it's around that kind of number. Just get the idea. So we're talking about 1850 for an ounce. So they think that they would revalue whatever you have in the bank. So let's just make it simpler. Let's say you had 1850 in the bank, just to kind of give you an understanding. That means that you would have $1 in the bank. See, that's what they would say is a real revalue system. Now, if we're talking about the Cabal, that's what they would do. They would go, no, your 1850 is $1. And they would reduce your number, and they would mess with you that way. No. If you have the 1850, we'll just use that example, in the fiat dollars in your bank account with a gold-backed currency that's coming, you're going to still have 1850 in the bank account, which means that at this point in time, there's a conversion rate for gold in this kind of rate. You're talking about 100 times more value. Now, it's not going to be like next day you have, 185,000, but in essence, that's essentially where it goes. And you're going, whoa, it's a big deal, right? If you have 10,000, or if 18,000, or if you have 185,000, you're talking about $100. But it's a graduated mechanism, because what's going to happen, value, when you have a valuable currency, so the currency has risen, prices will drop. Now, we've talked about this in other videos, but I'm going to kind of show you just how, but it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And people go, so like, we're going to be, and I had this one guy said to me, so what are we going to be back to? 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s value? Like, dude, and actually my sister asked this question. She was asking this question. She came over to my house right now. This is in January. And she goes, is it going to do that? And I said, okay. I said, let me tell you something. Jess, do you remember when Mom and Dad bought the 1976 Ford Granada? She goes, yeah, I remember that very well. I remember I was 10, okay? I think I was sick or something like that. I had really bad pneumonia at the time. So they kind of worried I was going to die, but because I was still out, I was still out of school, I just happened to go with them. And I found out that the car at the time frame, this 1976 Ford Granada, was $5,000. And she goes, yep, I get it. Okay. She remembers it. By the way, in our whole family, my younger sister, my older sister, and I, we all wrecked the car. Everyone in the family wrecked this car. The thing was like holding on by like fiberglass, by the end. Okay. But I said, okay, now when you go back in time and you go look at that value of that car, the thing didn't even have air conditioning. You rolled the windows down with your, right? You didn't have electric windows. You didn't have electric anything, right? It was AM radio. Didn't have FM, okay? I don't know if one of us upgraded it. The speakers were the same basic speakers are in there. They kind of rattled every once in a while because all the car accidents we went through. The thing we had to upgrade it, just to get a better engine in it because it messed up on that. I mean, there was just a bunch of things that were going wrong with it. That's not a bad car, but I'm just making up numbers. Let's say it has 25 different technologies in the car at the time frame. But my 2021 Hyundai Sonata has, I'm making up a number, 125 different technologies. Do you think that this car in the future, we're going to go back to 1976 prices? No, the car here has got much more value and much more technology and much more stuff. It still costs more to make. So if this car here was a whatever value, I mean, whether it was $25,000 or whether it was $40,000, depending on, which car that you buy of that, well, it's still not going to be $5,000. It doesn't make any sense that it would be that. It's going to have a relative value difference. Does that make sense? So when people say all the prices are going to go back to 1950s, I say, bah humbug. It ain't happening. Prices will drop as it goes along. So we've talked about this before. Service kind of things might drop a little quicker. Other things that have an inflated value, like insurances, houses. I mean, these suckers have inflated values. I mean, they don't even make any sense. I mean, we had bought a house in Tulsa in 2004, and I think we bought it for $200,000. I don't remember the exact number, but just kind of seeing that. Now, that was before the housing crash, right, in 2008. So I think it was like 2012, I was really going through a tough time, and I had to do a financial. And when we're doing a personal financial and we're trying to get refinanced for other things in the business, we looked at the value of the house, and the thing had only risen by I think it was like $215,000. Now that's pretty rare because normally values go up higher. Now from 2012 or 11 maybe, whenever that time frame was, to 2017 when we sold that house. We sold that house for, I think we sold it for $250,000. Now, how come it went up in value so much there versus here? Perceived value, okay? That's what happens in the fiat currency. Now, I just found out that same exact house now could sell for about $315,000 or something like that. And so it's gone up much more dramatically from 17 to 22. You're going, why does it go up that much? It's all perceived value, okay? Now, when we move into a gold-backed currency, when we have the values increasing, the prices will drop. Now, I think the inflated values will go really quickly, like insurances. Remember I told you about our insurance guy here? Michael's going to struggle with that because the prices will go down. And it might be really scary for people when prices go down like that. But guess what happens? More and more people can afford the health insurance. That's a good thing. When you add more people to it, you can actually do more. Because here's one of the things that happens. There are two different types of businesses, and I know I'm giving you a business thing and you're going through some of this stuff, but we talked about this before, but I want to share it in a different kind of way. There's two basic types of retail businesses. So retail one is low cost and high volume. What in the world would that be? I want you to think about the dollar store. Okay? If something's worth $1, you get the idea. You need to have a bunch of people coming into that place with the low cost because you still have costs of goods sold plus your plus your profit come up to a price. Okay? So this is how it works when you do that. So can these values actually change? Well, when we talk about dollar store, we're probably going to increase the value of the cost, which means that you can buy more stuff. You see what happens in the value stores like that? I mean, those kinds of low pricing kind of things. What they do, instead of making up 6 cans of Coke, you can only get 4 cans of Coke in that way. Do you see what I'm saying? So you're probably going to get more value in here, which means more stuff. Okay? Now, the other retail model, another one would be the high cost kinds of things with low volume. Now, sometimes there's another type of value, and I'll explain that in a second. But for instance, hearing aids, I'm an audiologist, okay? So they're high cost, they cost a bunch. I mean, there's really expensive cost of goods sold. Plus the profit that you have to do, and profit is about keeping the doors open. Don't think profit is like someone raping and pillaging in that. That's keeping the doors open, okay? Which comes up with your price. Now, the costs just don't like go from, hearing aids range, $2,500 for a pair, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So you're talking about a $5,000 pair of hearing aids, and you're going, oh my God. Well, it's not going to go to like $200 overnight. Why? Because the cost of goods, there's a lot of technology in there, just like we're talking about over here, okay? Cars are in the same kind of thing. There's a lot of different things that have that. When they're high cost there's a high type of technology and different things that happen inside. Plus, you're not even just talking about the product. You have to add that maybe with a bunch of service. Hearing technology takes a bunch of extra technology points, and people know how to manipulate that stuff. That's actually the same thing with surgeries, okay? But here's what happens. When you have things like insurance, which is so crazy when you think of this, insurance is actually way overpriced. Now, it's not the insurance agent's fault in the pricing point here, okay? What you have to understand is that he or she has been operating over in this kind of thing. So there's not as many people that he can do because people can't afford it. So people go without, or they go with lesser insurance points. But here's what's going to happen. He's going to find that he's going to move much more into this model. He's not going to do dollar store kind of thing, but he's going to move much more. So the costs are going to go down because the cost of goods are going to go down. And so he's going to be able to reduce the pricing. Pricing goes woof. And he's going to be able to help more people. And actually, he's going to make about the same profit. Okay? So he's going to be able to see this go down here. He's going to have to reduce this profit, which is going to reduce here. But because he's doing more people, he can actually sell more. And that's actually more people that are being helped. And to him, and this is what these people don't understand, because they're so used to the old system. Okay? When you have low value in your dollars, you have to have a higher price. This is what Joe Biden doesn't, anyone who loves Joe Biden doesn't get. He's raised the cost of everything because they've devalued the money. And just because we've lived with it for a very long time frame doesn't mean it's right. Because for instance, in Denver, and when I used to live in Denver in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, people couldn't afford a house when you got over $250,000 house. So with anything less than $300,000 house, people were buying it up left and right. And you're going, because no one can afford it when it gets up to those really high numbers. That's why in California, the housing crisis is such a problem. It's not just that they don't have enough housing. You got homeless people all left and up, down, up one side, down the other. It's because they can't afford it. Now you're talking about, see, when you get into this model, you can't afford things. And if you can't afford things, what happens is that in this kind of retail model, when things are super, super expensive, every day that this thing has to go up, less people can actually buy it. And you get to this critical point where you're going, I can't keep the doors open. This actually has the same exact problem. So there's a business actually in my building, and she wanted to do jewelry. Great. Jewelry actually has some cost of goods in there, so she made this custom jewelry, kind of cool. But she didn't have anyone coming in. There's no one she didn't have any walk-in traffic. So because she had, what she basically had is low volume with low cost, that's a recipe for death. And of course, she closed it up after a couple months. I mean, she didn't have any, housing costs she didn't have any rental costs or other things. But it was like, when you have low volume and low cost, you just can't keep the place open. Same problem happens when high costs go up really, really high, and lesser people can afford it, you can't keep it open either. See, we've been moving toward this edge more and more and more. And we have to flip into a new currency just to keep the economy going. Because then we go to people go, well, we would go to democratic socialism, that's a good thing. No, it's not. How in the world is it a good thing when no one has to do this? See, democratic socialism is another example of, it's a stupid statement, but it basically is the same kind of thing that Greece went through in 2009. Greece had 40% of the people worked for the government. 40% of the people work for the government, and then the government bellies up. Now you have instantly whatever you had, let's say, on most cases, let's say you had unemployment at 10%, whatever that number was. And the government was trying to mitigate, well, we don't really want to have all that stuff. And so now you just basically said maybe 35%, you keep maybe 5% to keep running the government. Now you just added 35% to your 10%. Now 45% of the people are out of work. Oh, it was upside down in 2009. It's because you can't keep going this way. So we have to move into this model, but it takes time to move into this idea. I know that's not exactly what you were hoping to hear from this kind of stuff too. People also worry that they're going to have their money confiscated. It's not going to happen that way, okay? It just isn't going to happen that way because the cabal's not in control. White hats, they're going to do great things. And see what happens when you have this thing, when you have lower costs, lower profit, lower price, you have a higher volume of people, and actually you can make more value, which is a good thing. And a business can actually thrive with that. The other retail model where you have high costs, low volume, when more people can afford it, because you have to have service and COGS and with the profit, more people can afford it because the price starts going down. It's a really good thing. So when the price happens here, drops here because these things drop, you have more and more people that turns into a higher, not exactly the same number, but you have a higher volume. Even with a higher cost, you're going, holy cow. And there's always a balancing point, okay? There's always a tipping point that you go, okay, that's about how low it can actually go. It's not about making it $5,000 to $200 in that. That's not the point. But what we got to do is have an innate value. So people are going to be adding value left and right in here. And we're going to get away from the big business model. The big businesses that want to ride over top of these people and make a ton of the earnings, they're not going to be able to compete. Big businesses hate competition. Small businesses live with it all the day long, okay? And so you're going to see a lot more of these two model bases start having an incredible improvement. And they're going to be so strong, they just punch out any of those cabal-based, big tech, big business kind of things. It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be really kind of cool, but it'll be a little bit upturning because you're not used to it and you're not comfortable with it. Chill. Get comfortable with it because it's good for the people. It's good for your employees. It's good for the, like I was saying, the people that come into your office, the people that come into your store. It's going to be good for everyone, and it's actually going to be good for you too, because you're actually going to be able to make more because the value, you don't have to make as much to have the same value. I mean, it's a great thing, and you're going to see like all the stuff start rising, and people are going to rise. Okay, so it's just trying to give you a little bit of understanding and a little issue that goes on in there. So thanks so much.